Oh, Harold Pettis, tell us what Bucyrus was like to you, and tell us the most important thing that happened to you at Bucyrus, Erie. This is Harold Pettis.
Well, years ago, I was down in Kentucky squirrel hunting, and I found this huge mushroom, and I broke it off, brought it back into my house, and Hester Harrell worked there at that time, and she called the press, and they came out, took my picture and put it on the front page of the paper, and Don Bryant was the plant manager, and he wrote an article and put it all over the new bulletin boards that Harold Pettis had rooted Jim Osman out of #1 mushroom hunter. So said Jim said he'd gone to Cuba and hunt thoroughly. So I remember that quite well.
Tell us how much that weighed. Did it weigh 4 pounds?
54 pounds.
54-pound mushroom, the largest in Kentucky and Indiana that year. So, and he put it in the newspaper. So I don't know what year that was. 1957. Put it close to the microphone.
Close to that.
Okay. All right. He has a brother-in-law and 2 daughters there. Do you have anything to say about Bucyrus? If not, we'll move on to Mr. Cressel. Okay, to Mr. Cressel. Mr. Cressel helped run this thing along with a lot of other people, so we're lucky to have him here. And we did a movie. Remember, it's on YouTube. I'll show you how to get on YouTube. But he went out to the 4-H Center. We had a big Bucyrus sign, and he went over the history of Bucyrus, Erie, and Evansville. So it's on YouTube if you want to watch it. And that's Bob Cressel. He worked at Bucyrus for 33 years. Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, pretty close, 32. 50 to 84. I just enjoy that you've been able to keep this going, and that's what we need to do until there's one left in the phone booth. So, now I guess one of the best things that I can say about it is that I made a lot of friends. Well, I didn't make friends setting rates, but made a lot of friends, and that's one thing about the place.
Okay, that was Mr. Cressel, and he was the timekeeper, so if you weren't on time, he would tell you about it. So he says he didn't have everybody as a friend, because if you weren't efficient, Mr. Cressel went and squealed on you. Okay, next guy. What's your name and how many years, what year to what year? Put it up 1 inch away from you. 1 inch.
Okay, what do you want to know?
Get it closer to your mouth. I want to know your name, how many years you at Bucyrus, and what was important in Bucyrus to you.
My name is Sonny Conrad. I was an A welder at Bucyrus, Erie. I tell you what I like to remember what they announced over the loudspeaker. They said this lady named Helen Hunt has found a billfold. Said we looked in the billfold, and there's no name or address in the billfold. But there is money in the billfold. So anyone who has lost their billfold, they can go to Helen Hunt Park.
Thank you, Mr. Conrad. Okay. Oh, thank you, Mr. Conrad. How much money was that?
I didn't get the billfold.
Okay, no billfold. Okay. Next gentleman there, your name, how many years at Bucyrus, and what was significant at Bucyrus to you?
My name's Randy Tolley. I was there from 78 to 81 and got laid off a bunch of times. And I worked in the NC machine, Bay 2.
We don't know what the NC machine is.
Numerical control, tape control, and ran manual machines. And what I remember most about it was a blizzard of 78 when it snowed so bad. And my grandmother lived on Teacup Avenue, and I walked to her house, spent the night, then walked back to work, and I didn't miss a day of work when they were, I think they were about 2 or 3 days, they were hard to get around. What I remember was clabber. They played clabber at lunchtime, and I remember that, and I wish it would have kept going, I really do.
Hey, was Mr. Verville your boss? Tom Verville?
I don't think so. I don't remember. I don't know. But I was the last group to get hired, I think, and worked third shift. So no, I don't think I remember him.
All right, thank you very much.
It's my lovely wife, Lisa.
Okay.
And I think he's the youngest one here.
Lisa said that Mr. Tolley is the youngest person here, just so you know. Lisa's picking on us. Okay. Next person.
My name is Norman Ryder.
Closer.
My name is Norman Ryder. I was employed at BE from 1951 to 81. I worked in the machine shop in the quality control department. I enjoyed working there. I had a lot of good friends. Unfortunately, a lot of them are not with us today. We have to think about them too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move to the next table here. We're coming all the way up front. We want it in some type of order. Just hand it down here. Yeah, bring it up this gentleman right here. We're going to work our way down again. Okay, thank you for the comments. If you want to say something later that you've forgotten, usually I forgot a lot of what I wanted to say. Okay, go ahead, sir.
My name is Steve Stickler. Gosh, I only worked at Bucyrus for like 9.5 years before they shut down. But I worked all over the place. Never did find anything I could do, so but I worked in the machine shop, the hydraulic shop, the tool room, and just all over the place. My best memory is all the good people. Great folks in Bucyrus area. Matter of fact, I think if they were still here, I'd probably still be working for them.
Thank you very much.
My name is Ron Adams, and I worked from Bucyrus area from 1967 to 81. The unique thing I remember is I worked in the computer room, and data processing was in its infancy at that time. We started off with working with 80-column punch cards. Nowadays, people get more information off of their smartphone than we've ever thought about putting that away in a year.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Adams. Okay. Now, Evelyn, I do want your mom to say something about your dad. This is Mrs. Wahalen, and Marvin came to this all the time. We lost Marvin last year. He's a heck of a man, heck of a farmer, and they go to the church, New Salem, and they have a great fish fry or a great food fest in September every year. Darlene, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Darlene Zwallen. My husband was Marvin Zwallen. He worked at Bucyrus from 1956 after he got out of the Army through 1982. He was one of the last ones to leave, I think. He worked mainly in the machine shop, had so many friends there, and I think Evansville lost a lot when Bucyrus left the town. Back in the day, it was always the place to work. Thank you.
Marvin did farm whenever he got done working. He farmed, so he worked about 80 hours a week.
Or more than that.
90. Okay.
Yeah, he farmed, and our son still has our family farm now, so.
Okay.
He worked mainly second and third shifts because then he could farm in the daytime.
And this their daughter, Evelyn, and she's come to most of these reunions, and we're lucky to have her. She works at Old National Bank downtown, so if you need any more money, she's got extra money. Okay. This is Mr. Gibson.
Yeah, my name's Richard Gibson. I worked in maintenance, and I worked at Bucyrus Erie for about 13 years. I first started out in the machine shop, ran a radio on drill, and I was in there on one Christmas. We didn't used to get Christmas Eve off until some later years, and I was working, and all of a sudden it really got quiet in there. Nobody was around. I couldn't see or find anybody. Everybody kind of just disappeared. So I got out and I started walking around and came across the supervisor's office, Mac McCoy, some of you I'm sure remember him, went in that office and here all these guys were in there having a big time Christmas party. Yeah, and I didn't get invited. They said, well, we didn't know whether you'd be in for it or not, seeing how you're new. They had more whiskey in there than Stella's bar did. Across the street. But it was a wonderful place to work. It was like being at home, and everybody that worked there was outstanding people, and everyone had an outstanding capability of what they did and where they had to do it. It was just fabulous. I thought I'd be there until the day I retired.
Thank you very much.
I'm Jerry Cunningham. I worked at Bucyrus from 72 to 82. Most of my time was spent in parts shipping, but I worked over in the erecting floor for a little while, and I can remember one year Evansville Material bought a 65B upper works to put on a barge down on the river. Par Trucking come over here and loaded that whole thing on a flatbed. They went down Claremont Avenue. They took down power lines. Everything went down Ohio Street with that thing. They had a police escort, of course, but I can remember taking that whole upper works down the street on that flatbed. That was a feat. I mean, that thing had multi-tires on it. 5 foot diameter, the trailer did. But that was one of my best memories.
Mr. Cunningham, you talked about transporting things. I think Joanne Walker said one of these past years, we're a World War II museum and a museum for a lot of other wars, but she would say that it was her or somebody else, I thought it was her, but she was in charge of so many trains, you know, they would call and she would get a highest priority to get a train to pick things up from Bucyrus to send all the way to California or send it anywhere. But the war was a tremendous time, but Bucyrus supplied a lot of things in World War II. And whoever was in charge at Bucyrus, they got a real high priority to get things and goods other places. And you're talking about a different era, but in the 40s, it was really important. Go ahead, say it out loud if you got something to say.
Well, my name is Steve Cunningham, and I'm Jerry's brother, but I started at Bucyrus in 1973, and I worked in a machine shop for 4 years and was going to school doing some things, but I transferred out to the service department in 77. So, but a lot of time, a lot of good guys. I followed Richard down the radio drill press line and worked in a high bay and over in a hydraulic shop and just throughout the shop, which really benefited from me as I got out in the field and started working on the machines. But I lasted, I worked for Bucyrus until 2011 when they closed the Evansville plant. I switched to the Milwaukee plant and worked in the service department there and into sales, and they were sold to Caterpillar in 2011, and I did work 5 years with Cat before I retired. But it was a great place to work. The people were just fantastic throughout the whole company, and it was a really enjoyable. I guess I'm very lucky to say that I don't think I ever got to go to work regretting having to go to work. It was just a great place to work with great people. So.
And Steve, you talk about Milwaukee. If you think about that, they had a big museum up there, and they've just closed it recently, but I've talked to their museum, and they had a lot of Bucyrus Erie things displayed that I think were in the size of a building this size, and they had them realistically out, bulldozers, the shovels, and other things. But there were three big plants. It was Evansville was a plant, Milwaukee, and then was it somewhere, was Erie, Pennsylvania, or?
Erie, Pennsylvania, and then for a short time they had Pocatello, Idaho also, that they manufactured the 20x70 machine when it first came out. It was the first 100-yard drag line, and we manufactured a lot of them in Milwaukee, or in Pocatello. So.
And the three plants, one made large items, one made medium-sized, one made small. Can you clarify which one made what when we had three plants open?
Well, the mining machinery was predominantly out of South Milwaukee plant up there, and course, you manufactured parts and we're all sent to the field. That was about an 18-month process from the time a machine was sold till it was sent out to the field to erect. It took anywhere from a year and a half to 2 years to do that. Erie, Pennsylvania, and Evansville plant, where they had different products, but they were considered the construction machinery division. And they made the hydraulic cranes, the backhoes, the lift cranes for construction and stuff like that. So the difference would be just the size of the equipment. Again, Milwaukee was a corporate office, and then they made the mining equipment, and Erie and Evansville were in the considered construction machinery division. So.
And if you talk about war, the Seabees was created. Seabees is a construction battalion. It was created about 1942 in World War II. They have a large museum in Port Hueneme, California, and they have 2 great big bulldozer blades that say Bucyrus Erie on them. But we've had several Seabee talks here, and the Seabees love Bucyrus Erie because Bucyrus Erie had all the machinery to build things once you conquered somewhere. If you think of it, when you go to war, you have to make airstrips, you have to make bridges, you have to make buildings, you have to make plumbing, you have to dig for coal, you have to do all kinds of things. And Bucyrus was a supplier of a lot of products during World War II and subsequent wars. So the Seabees did not exist until World War II, and they're still in existence today, and they're a construction battalion. If you look at the average troop's age was about 18 years of age in World War II. If you went to a construction battalion, Bucyrus of Seabees, the average age was 37. They would come and just take all of industrial contractors and put them in the Army. They weren't in good shape, but they knew how to do things. They didn't want construction guys that didn't know what they were doing. But it was they leaned a lot on people like Bucyrus. Okay, we move the microphone back over that way. Now, and if you think of it, Stephen gave us a lot of these items today. If I think of it, I think Diane Sawyer and Ann, who was the person in charge of this reunion for a long time?
Joanne Walker.
Joanne Walker and Bob Cresso and Sylvia. They helped run the things and get these things out and had all kinds of gifts at times. So he's carried on the tradition. I wasn't doing that part, but he did. So I thank him a lot. Okay.
My name is Sylvia Sawyer. I worked at Bucyrus from 1956 to 1982, excuse me, and enjoyed it. It was a good time. I made a lot of friends and met a lot of people. And I'm like some of the others here today. If they were still in business, I'd probably still be trying to work there, even though I'm past the retirement age. But it was a great experience.
Mrs. Myers doesn't want to say anything, but Mrs. Myers' husband was Ralph, and everybody remembers Ralph. He was a great man, and appreciate him. I don't know what section he worked in, but he was a live wire. Thanks, Barbara, for coming.
Yeah, my name is Kenny Luigs, and this is my wife Colette, and my son Blake sitting beside her. And I worked at Bucyrus from 1974 to 1982 when they closed. And I worked in the machine shop and on the assembly floor on the C line. And one thing I do remember, and when we went on our tour, was the bricks. And when we get a flood, that brick floor would raise up. I do remember that. That was kind of unique. And but anyhow, I was. It was a very good place to work. I got on right out of high school when I was 18 years old, and Vinny Schneider, I bugged him till he finally hired me. I don't have anything now. Kenny, come back in a week. I'd come back in a week. He'd say, come back. You know, he kept coming back. Finally, after 6 months, I finally got on, and it was a wonderful place to work, and I probably would have retired there. But anyhow, I made a lot of friends like everybody's got here, and miss all the people that have already gone on before us.
Thank you very much.
My name's Tom. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
My name's Tom Emmer. I worked at Bucyrus for 22 years, mostly in the parts department. I remember best of the best working habits I had a few bad ones too. And in going along with what Richard said about partying,
Closer to your mouth.
one of my jobs when I was with the parts department was to go find missing stock that people had put in the wrong bins. You'd be surprised how many half-pint bottles of whiskey I had. And some of them still had Jimmy Jordan's fingerprints on them.
Okay, this is Gail Hawkins, and she's helped get this together. She put everything in alphabetical order, helped a ton on these things, and so we're lucky to have her, and if it wouldn't have been for her, we wouldn't have had this. Go ahead, Gail. She's Hawkeye's wife.
Yes, that's one of the things I have to thank for Bucyrus Erie. They brought Dale Eugene Hawkeye Hawkins into my life, and he was the most wonderful husband you could ever ask for. And also I had a daughter that didn't know her father, and she loved him. And so I just want to say that about him. Anyway, in 1956 of June, I graduated from Wright's High School. Go Big Blue.
Yes.
And this is my fellow classmate over here too, Sylvia. Sylvia, yes. Anyway, I was at one end of Claremont, close to the river, and by August of '56, I was at the other end of Claremont, close to where the pig farm was located. I don't know if anybody knows about that, but Bucyrus Erie owned that whole block from Teacuple to Barker Avenue. Howell Park was on one side, and the wetlands, part of the wetlands on the other side. And I just think that Bucyrus Erie, not only did they build this construction machinery, which you see all over the world, they say that the sun never set on the Bucyrus Erie name because we were all around the world. I remember some men coming from Lincoln, England, there was Rustin Bucyrus in Lincoln, England, and he gave me a little knife, and I still have that little pocket knife. And then, like I say, Hawk was my most wonderful thing about working there, and all the people I worked with. It was like a family, and I was devastated. I thought I would probably not have been any more horrified if my mother and dad had set me out on the porch and said, okay, we're going to put you out in the world now, goodbye, good luck, because that's the way it felt. We were out on the front porch and walking away. And there are two other people in this room that also, their families started with their spouses getting together at Bucyrus. I know Sonny Connor and Barbara Myers, and myself. So it was a wonderful place, and it was just like, it was a family place. There were men and women. Fred and Jane Tong come to mind right away. There were men and women that were married, and they both worked there, and supervisors were always ready to listen to whatever problems you had. It didn't have to be work. If you had something at home that was bothering you and it was affecting your work, you could go talk to them, and they were right there for you. So thank you to Bucyrus Erie. And I'm like Sylvia said, I'm 85. I retired when I was 74, and I would have probably still been working at Bucyrus Erie if they were there. Wonderful, wonderful place. I should say too that my brother-in-law is the one that got me on at Bucyrus, so I have that part of the family to thank for that.
Thank you very much, Gail. And one of the common elements that's being said here is that people really like the Bucyrus area, and somehow it was a family. I've gone to all the AMP reunions called Great Atlantic Pacific Tea Company. That was a much bigger company than Bucyrus, but we folded with our reunions in 2003. That's 20 years ago, and the company left town about the same time you did, but a lot bigger, but it was more dispersed. And for some reason, to have 45 people here when a company's closed 40 years ago, absolutely amazing. It says something about the company, but the company is, like the Navy says, it's not the Navy, it's the people. So it must be the people.
And it's because we're all family. My name is Pat
Closer,
Greenfield.
closer.
My name is Pat
Lower,
Greenfield.
lower.
You know what? I yell. I used to call
No,
bingo.
just, we can't hear it, right there.
Just like this, turn like this, turn.
There you go. That's it.
I got to remember what I was going to say.
Oh, bingo.
Yeah, I used to call bingo. But I reported to Al Thompson, who was the plant controller at the time. And I was right there with Cliff Townsend and that. Every day at lunch, I would have to clean off my desk because Virginia, Hayden, and John Smith, and Al, and I, we would play clabber at my desk, right? Another fond memory is bowling. I used to bowl with Eddie Lynn. He's spoiled my kiddos every week, for sure. Another person, and I'm sure you remember her, Virginia Hudson Nossick. She was the first person that I worked with, and I worked at Bucyrus, Erie. I came there in May of '56 before I graduated from Wright's High School with Sylvia and Gail. And I was there when they closed at '82. I put in at least 20 years because I dropped out for a while, got married, had my children. Then I went back and saw Vinny Schneider and said, I'm ready to go back to work. And he said, I got just the job for you. So I paid the bills and audited expense records for those that traveled. And Al Thompson stuck behind me 110%. Because there were some people that put things on there that didn't belong on there. But I caught them. So it was just, it's always good to see everybody come to these. And Mark's got my help whenever he needs it.
My name is Alice Whitfield, and I started at Bucyrus in about 1959, and I left about in 1964 to work for the school corporation so that I could be home with my children in the summertime. But I found a lot of good friends there, and Gail Hawkins was one of them.
Okay.
Harold Grace. I worked for Bucyrus for 40 years. I started in the shop as a lift truck driver and ended up in the parts department helping people out in the area, helping with their machines. I worked in South America twice for parts. I enjoyed it very much. I retired out of the department in Erie.
Anybody else at your table? Howard? Okay. They brought 5 people, so they paid more than anybody. Appreciate it. They carried us all. What we
did, but
my grandmother.
Let's give
She's
him
in this
a hand
picture.
and thank him for everything.
I think you need to thank that lady.